As promised, though, we'll talk some college football. Joined right now by a head coach in his 10th season. It is his 8th year with Clemson. Clemson's 3-1, 2-1, 18th in the AP, 19th in the coaches poll, and he has led the Tigers to 6 bowl games in 7 years. Tommy Bowden is my guest. Tommy, nice to have you back. How are you?
Thanks for the vine. Great to be back in the jungle. Been a while since I've been in the jungle.
Yeah, I'll say, Tommy, it's good to have you back. How are things?
Hey, been a while since I've been winning enough to get in the jungle, huh?
Well, you played your way in, Coach. You're back. You earned it.
Thank you.
Tommy, talk about the big win over Carolina Saturday, 52-7. I guess all coaches want to get off to a good start. 7 scores in the first 8 possessions, I guess, would constitute a pretty good start.
Yeah, I was concerned coming off a Florida State win, kids being too high, and then going into a game favored, playing at home, it'd be emotional letdown. But I've got 18 seniors, and they showed up pretty focused on Saturday.
I was going to say, you could always count on your upperclassmen to do that. Coming off a win over Florida State, I mean, Tom, you've seen this so many times. When they invest so much and they get to such a high, you exert so much emotionally. How big was the concern that we might not have a place to go to after a big win like that?
Well, it's kind of been our mode of operation. A couple of years ago, I beat Miami, then lost to Duke, and I think I beat Florida State and lost to Wake Forest. So we really challenged our team to change the mode of operation, be a little bit different, and see if we can change some of the history we've had over the last few years.
Yeah, Tommy, I talked to Terry the other day, and I hate to always go back to this, but the Bowden Bowl, or whatever you want to call it, just the dynamic is just so interesting. And by interesting, I mean really kind of messed up in a way, because on the one hand, you've got your father on the other sideline, so you don't want to celebrate a win over a family member. But on the other hand, it's such a big win for the program. So emotionally, how do you feel after a win like that?
Well, we hadn't won here down there in 17 years. So as far as my relationship with Clemson and what it meant to the program, the fans, you have a great feeling. But again, when I talked to my father and mother on Sunday, somebody's going to be mad, and it just so happens to be your family. Of course, with my brother Jeff there at Florida State, and with mother being involved, so closely that, when I win, most of them are going to be mad.
Tommy Bowden joining us. And Tommy, you've coached against your father 8 times now. I would imagine it doesn't get any easier either, does it?
No, it really doesn't, because they're well coached, they recruit well, and they're tough to beat. I think they were 54-2 in ACC games in Tallahassee. So, as long as he's healthy, he keeps recruiting good players. They're just they're a hard team to beat. Not very many people beat them.
Yeah, there's so much talk about your father, but your brother Jeff's getting some heat down there as offensive coordinator. Is it tough for you to see him dealing with what he's dealing with right now?
It is, because it's flesh and blood, but one of that's in the job description if you choose this profession. And what Paterno went through a few years ago with 4 out of 5 losing seasons, my father, when he drops down to 8 or 9, and if you jump into this thing, you surely are going to get your dose of medicine. And he's getting his now, and he'll be better for it. You just got to survive the year or two that you get it.
Clemson head coach Tommy Bowden joining us. Tommy, when I had Terry on last week, and we usually do him a couple of times a year, I didn't have a chance to ask him, but why do you think that he's no longer in it? Is it because of those things you just discussed? Did he just decide he wanted to go in a different direction? Where did Terry come out on all this?
Well, initially he was making too much money out of it. He was making a good salary at Auburn there when he got out, and then when he jumped right as soon as he got back involved with television, some couple of radio stints, he was pulling a pretty good income, and it is amazing now. I'm imagining you got to come up with a pretty productive show every day, or you're not going to be on very long. And coaching is pretty much the same way. There's a lot of pressure. You better win. You better win a lot, or you're not going to be around. So that builds up after a while. It's kind of like the Florida State win, Jim. The victory lasted about 24 or 48 hours. The loss against Boston College lasted 7 days. And those 7 days overcome those 24 hours real quick nowadays.
Tommy, it's so true. I mean, the high of the high will never equal the low of the low in terms of intensity, right?
Well, exactly right, and there's so many more different ways to be criticized nowadays. And even though I don't buy the papers and do the internet and the radio, my wife and my friends do. So you're going to hear it on one end or the other. And we're high paid, which we should be. We generate a lot of income, but it come with a high pay comes a lot of expectations. Sometimes realistic, sometimes not. But again, regardless, the expectations are always high.
Tommy, it's like that, and it's going to get worse before it gets any better. But the good news is there are still good stories. Sometimes you have to look for them, but there are some good stories, and I think that you have one of the best stories in 20-year-old cornerback Ray McAlph-Relebe. I want your thoughts on that. The fact that, and I think most fans know this, he has an 11-year-old brother living in foster care, didn't want it to be that way. He sought out and he gained custody of his brother, who is now living with him while he goes to school. Have you ever been around a 20-year-old athlete quite like Ray?
Never have. I've got a lot of my players, have children. They father children, maybe a year or two old. If they have a mother to take care of it, maybe see it on the weekends until they get out of college. But to actually have an 11-year-old brother that you're in charge of the discipline, of his homework, of his studies, any kind of parent-teacher association meeting that you've got, and gets to making sure he gets to school and gets home from school, and you got an away game, he's got to be taken care of during the weekend. I cannot fathom the added responsibility, along with being a student athlete at a pretty prestigious university.
No, I mean, how many 20-year-olds do you come in contact with? I mean, when I was a 20-year-old, I was a knucklehead extraordinaire, and I didn't have that kind of responsibility that comes along with being a major D1A athlete. I mean, when did he first tell you what he wanted to do?
Well, he's been here for a little over a year, and there are several times he'd come off as, crying about his mother had called him again. She was kind of strung out on drugs. The brothers had been at the apartment for 3 days, didn't have anything to eat, couldn't get to school, didn't know where their mother was. And then after about 6 or 8 months, he started thinking about taking his brother in. His brother had come up and visited once or twice, and then I guess it was maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I think, the initial process started with him starting to do the research necessary to see if he could either legally adopt them or bring them in as a foster, kind of like a foster environment.
And again, what we're talking about is a 20-year-old student athlete caring for his 11-year-old brother. The university recently was granted a waiver from the NCAA to allow the school to set up a trust fund for his younger brother. How good is it to see the NCAA get that one right and help out?
Well, usually they're heavily criticized, but again, I thought it took a lot of courage on their part to make this decision, because there is a lot of gray area involved in it, and that's one thing they try to stay away from. But again, a lot of courage on their part to make the decision, because there's no doubt that this was the best thing for the student athlete, and that's what the organization is supposed to do to benefit the student athlete.
Tommy Bowden is my guest. It really is a great story. And Tommy, you guys are 3-1. You're 2-1 in conference. You could be unbeaten if not for a late block kick. Do you feel like when you look at what's happened so far, the win over Florida State, the dominant performance last week, do you feel like you don't want to jinx it, and it is early, but do you feel like you're really onto something that maybe you're in the making of a special season?
Right now it does, Jim. Like I said, I've got so many seniors, and last week and the week before, they were saying the right things in the paper, saying the right things at practice, in our team meetings, and you never know. Of course, they got to back it up on Saturday, but there were so many indications that this team's mental frame of mind and focus was a little bit more mature than teams I've had in the past. And so far, every performance, every game we've played, they have played backing it up. So I'm kind of anxious now from week to week to see how we respond. But if we do like we had the first 4 games, and this could be something special.
It's so true, Tommy, isn't it? Almost every single coach I talk to has the same concern in mind, regardless of the year, regardless of the schedule, regardless of who they have. Mark Rick said it the other day, we're always concerned how our guys are going to respond to adversity, and you never know until you're out there, because there's no way to simulate that in practice.
Well, there really isn't. And, you got guys that are 19 or 20, and there's who's coming to the game, there's tickets, there's family problems. Sometimes if the sun and the moon and the stars and the biorhythms just aren't right, they ain't going to play on Saturday. So everything's got to be lined up pretty well at kickoff on Saturday. It seems like to get a performance nowadays.
And so far they are Clemson 3-1 and ranked 18th in one poll, 19th in the other. Tommy, I'm glad you got that vine. I'm glad you came back in. Good to get you a little jungle karma.
Hey, well, enjoy your show. I listen to it when I'm on the road recruiting. Don't have a lot of time now, but when I'm on the road recruiting, I turn it on.
You got it, Tommy. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You take care.